And here we have Miss Margaret Roland giving us the story of Ernst Haeckel, radical monist, Darwinist, and some say one of the causes of the Second World War.
He was born on February 16th in 1834 in Potsdam, Germany, and he died in 1919 in Jena, Germany. He was a monist philosopher and a great promoter of Darwinian evolution. He was a zoologist, an embryologist, and a naturalist, and this is sort of what we were talking about last week when we were talking about the Greeks, and it's the belief that nature is governed by objective laws that can be found through experimentation and observation, and the supernatural is the same as nature. So monism is the belief that everything is made up of one substance, and there is an intersection with this, that they can either be radical materialists, so everything stems from matter and is physical, or everything is stemming from a spiritual reality and is sort of supernatural, and that's the belief of idealists. And in particular, radical materialists, which is what Haeckel was, they say that everything can be studied by science and that the body and mind are both physical. In addition, they also talk about history as being physical, and that you can, keep it in terms of physicality, which I think will be nature is a supernatural view of Haeckel's scientific career. When he was a professor of comparative anatomy at the University of Jena, he specialized in invertebrate anatomy, and he worked primarily with the radiolarians, which is a type of invertebrate group belonging to the superfamily Staphoidea. And in particular, a lot of his pictures or drawings are of radiolarians. He also named thousands of species, especially those in the kingdom Protista, and mapped a genealogical tree relating to life forms. Among the many biological terms that he coined, the most known are phylum, phylogeny, stem cell, and ecology. He also was the main popularizer of Darwin's theory of evolution. He's actually definitely attributed to these things. So he was a materialistic monist, as I referenced earlier, and so that they believe that in the world there's only a material reality. The world is strictly material and atomic, and it stems from one original atomic substance. He definitely believed in evolution, as I just referenced, and he thought of it as a very important part of the growth of species, and when you're studying certain species, that's a really important thing to look into. And he believed, again, like I said, that history also is physical, and that it can be drawn out or put on display. And then also he believed in his recapitulation theory, which is on the next slide. And so this was Haeckel's attempt to kind of clarify the apparent similarities between humans and other animals. And I think there's some other recapitulation type theories out there. I believe they're also called the biogenetic laws. So other people have kind of expanded on them. But basically his theory claims that the successive stages of an individual's development represents one of the adult forms that appeared in its evolutionary history. So kind of just a reinforcement of evolutionary and kind of his own twist on it. And then this led to his embryo drawings, which is on the next slide, which kind of attempts to form similarities between humans and other species, obviously figured or shown. And then on to the 8th slide. So just the intersection of Haeckel's monist beliefs and his scientific work, kind of getting into his art, stepping back from his history and going more towards his art. Haeckel's art demonstrates a convergence of art and science, and art is particularly symmetric and detailed. It's not perfectly symmetric, but he orders it in a way that is supposed to mirror symmetry, and it's incredibly detailed. And then also many of the pictures showcase evolution on part of certain species, or at least it alludes to that, showing many different forms of the same thing that look very similar but are slightly different. His drawings also reveal what things are physically, which is basically as a materialistic monist what Haeckel believed that they're physically, which is basically as a materialistic monist what Haeckel believed that they were, and that's all they were, because he only believed in the physical reality. He also published 5 big books of art containing, I would say, thousands of things that he drew, and also the slides from when he looked at these things under a microscope. And then getting on to the 9th slide, we're getting into some of his art, and in particular the one on the left is Prosobranchia, which is a subclass of sea snails. And then the middle one is the radiolarians. I think this is my favorite one. I think this one also, it's very obvious that he's trying to suggest evolution, because if you look at the, I'm not exactly sure what to call them, but the branching out things on the two either sides of the main, or like the middle row of drawings, you can definitely see that they look very similar, but they're obviously expanding and growing. So it kind of, again, seems to show evolution. And then on the one on the right is Basidiomycetes, which is a phylum of fungi. And in particular, again, you see sort of these different variations of similar things. I like these ones because they're black and white, and I think that again, it kind of proves a stark contrast. And then onto the 10th slide. The first one is Acidiacea, which are basically sea squirts. And the right one is microscopic hexacoralla. And these both are incredibly symmetric. Obviously they're not perfectly symmetric, but they're very symmetric, and they're just very beautiful. And if you didn't know what you were looking at, I think you would still find them beautiful. In fact, when you look them up, there is so many different like ads for you to buy them in many different forms that, I mean, obviously people really like them. On to the 11th slide. The first one is a siphoanophore, which is a marine organism. The middle one is a cnidarian, which is another aquatic invertebrate. And then the right one is another radiolarian, and it's his kind of way to expose it in a like 3D way. He was trying to draw it like 3D, so getting rid of all like the bone structures and trying to expose what it is on the inside. And in particular, this one kind of looks like he's trying to break down like what cells look like, or what he thinks cells look like. In particular, because radiolarians are, I think, a matter of a millimeter or something on that scale. And then on to the 12th slide. So obviously his art is incredibly detailed. It's just, I mean, there really isn't much other words besides incredible, because to be able to draw something like that freehand, you know, without modern technology, it's incredible. And so that is a really good aspect. However, there are some other issues with his art, and while most of his drawings are not necessarily inaccurate, in particular his embryo drawings, he changed them in a way that supported his scientific perspective and beliefs, which isn't really good, and that's actually put a tarnish on his name, because they found out that, you know, he changed them just so that they could support his recapitulation theory. And also, kind of awfully, his writings, particularly on his recapitulation theory, were later used as like quasi-scientific justifications for the racist and imperialistic programs of Nazi Germany. So even though he died shortly after World War I ended, you know, these were still used. So again, it kind of puts a tarnish on his name, even though he wasn't even alive at that point. So I think that also kind of points to the fact that even though we die, our work still lives on, and we have affected people. And I think it's important to have a good effect on society and to leave a good legacy. And I think it's not all about legacy, because it doesn't matter if you're well known by a lot of people, but I think it's what you do on Earth doesn't just end when you die, it continues on. And besides that, again, some issues with his art, obviously, but also I have to say, like, it's really incredible that he was able to incorporate his beliefs into his art, because I think, for me at least, that's definitely something that I haven't been able to do very well, because I am pro-life, but how do I incorporate that into drawing a flower? You know, if I'm drawing maybe a pregnant mother, I'm going to put that in a very good light, and then obviously that's going to show my pro-life views, but how do I, you know, take that part of myself, that belief that I have, and put that into my work? And so I think, as much as his beliefs are maybe a little bit misguided, I do not believe in monism. I don't think you do either, as Catholics, but I think it's still amazing that he was able to incorporate that into his work, and express himself in a way. And it's not like you would immediately just look at his pictures and be like, oh, he was a monist. That's not necessarily something that's super surface level, but if you are looking deeper, then you are going to discover that, and you're going to realize that he, his guiding principles, have a fingerprint on his work, which is, I think, important. I think it's important to not just have our guiding principles in the way we act, but also in what we produce. And then I think also something that I was thinking about that's ironic is that he only believed, he was a materialist, he only believed in the physical nature of things. However, his art alludes to his beliefs in monism, so technically they are more than just something physical, so I think that's kind of ironic, that they're alluding to his monism, but in alluding to his monism, they're being more than something physical, so yeah. I hope this made sense.